All right, Congressman, thanks so much for your time. I just want to start with what you are very well known for on the House floor, spending. Um, your Congress is moving forward on a lot of plans in this 119th Congress with now a Republican president. I want to start with this debt limit, this debt ceiling. We know the president, Donald Trump, wants it. There's talks about how to do it. Where are you on this? I know you're very, very critical when it comes to spending.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. First of all, I agree that we need to get the debt ceiling off the table so that Chuck Schumer can't play games with the markets. I think the president is right about that. I've put forward, along with my more conservative colleagues in the Freedom Caucus, those of us who genuinely oppose lifting the debt ceiling without spending cuts that go along with it. We have proposed a solution that would raise the debt ceiling for about 2 years, which is about $4.5, $5 trillion. We've proposed doing that along with funding for defense, obviously important for San Antonio, funding for the border, obviously important for San Antonio, but importantly, cuts to pay for those things. Getting rid of the EV mandate, which would save $117 billion. Work requirements for Medicaid and for SNAP, that would be about $120 billion. Ending the ridiculousness of the student loan bailouts, that would save $100 to $270 billion. You can pay for border, pay for defense, and then we could use that as an agreement to agree to the debt ceiling. Unfortunately, some of my, I'm going to call them swampy colleagues in both parties, they want to spend more money and they don't like cuts. So they want one grand big bill here in Congress, and the president's trying to decide how to make that all work. And that big bill, unfortunately, would come with a whole lot of spending. And now they want to move the debt ceiling with a big appropriations package. And can you believe it or not, another big supplemental spending bill for California that will blow the budget. So I oppose that. I want a responsible approach, not a bust the budget approach.
You just brought it up here. You are known for, you have slammed your own party on the House floor when it comes to spending.
And it's going to happen again soon.
Yeah, and you have brought that up. Now you've got a very slim majority in Congress. You had one in the 118th Congress. What is your message to your Republican colleagues in the House, like Tony Gonzalez, like those here in Texas, when it comes to spending?
Yeah, cut spending or get put in the ash bin of history. That's my message to my Republican colleagues. Stop spending money we don't have. It is a tax on the average hardworking American. People that I represent who are just trying to get by and can't afford to borrow and build and buy a home, can't afford a vehicle. All of these things are driven heavily by government spending that is driving up inflation and making goods and services more expensive. We should also, by the way, deal with healthcare and the healthcare tax of the massive exorbitant insurance rates and premiums that are being driven by federal policy. We can fix a lot of that in reconciliation, but we're not doing that right now, to the best of my observation, among Republicans. They instead want to do something which is very typical of Republicans: jam through a tax cut bill without spending restraint and without the serious policy changes that we know we need to put in place and that we campaigned upon. So I'm pretty undeterred. I'm what you see is what you get. I ran on balancing the budget. I ran on securing the border of the United States, restoring healthcare freedom, giving our men in uniform the tools they need. That what we put forward as a proposal would do those things. And so I look for my colleagues to answer in kind and not do the traditional, kind of swamp game.
I want to talk about the border in a second, but first, what you said, some of those policies you want to get rid of. I want to talk about the student loan bailouts. A lot of people in San Antonio rely on those student loans, and they're trying to get ahead, and these bailouts help them. What's your message to them?
Well, my message is to the entirety of the people that I represent. For example, the plumber in San Antonio or New Braunfels or in Kendall County up the road, who is getting by and never took out student loans and is being asked to subsidize and pay for the student loan of someone that they took it out, knowing what they were doing. And then the government comes in, by the way, unilaterally, unlawfully, in my view. The president of the United States just says, you don't have to pay those loans back. Well, that costs a lot of money. So if someone wants to go pay for that, if some rich donor wants to come in and pay for that, by all means. But when we're going to go out here, we're going to say we're cutting taxes over here, and we're not going to cut spending over here, and we're going to leave $270 billion of student loan bailouts in place. How is that fair to the plumber? How is that fair to the men and women in uniform right there at Fort Sam Houston, which I represent, who didn't take out the loans because they served in the United States military? How is it fair to my wife or any of the other people that I know in the district who paid their student loans off, a product of a single mom, worked her way up through college and paid her student, is still paying her student loans? Why is that fair? I don't think it is. So I'm going to stand up for that. And look, we can make education affordable, but let's make sure it's people going and getting jobs that they can then go turn into employment in STEM and in science and technology and math and engineering. So I think that's what we should do.
So on the border here, Congressman, your borders are the Trump administration's borders are is ready to go.
Yep.
Republicans are trying to do a lot of things in one bill or two bills. Obviously, immigration is a big part of this.
Right.
When we're looking at the GOP agenda in this new Congress and with this GOP president, where for you is immigration on that list?
Immigration is right there, number one, alongside, I think, spending restraint. But I think border security has to be put in place. The president can do a lot to immediately stem the tide of the problem, triage and stop the flow, reinstitute remain in Mexico and migrant protection protocols. That will send a loud signal around the world to stop the flow. But we need policy changes and we need more funding to help Tom Homan, the border czar, whom you just referenced, to be able to do his job to remove and repatriate the literally millions of people who are unlawfully dumped into the United States. Let's be clear. There are a lot of criminal and bad actors. I've invited my friend Alexis Nungare to the inauguration to join me here in Washington. She lost her daughter last July to Venezuelan gangs, Tren de Aragua, and it's devastating. But there's also lots of people who might be good people looking for jobs that were dumped into the United States. That's not how our system works. You can't do that. We've got to send a message to the world that you can't have these unlawful releases into the country, get a status quo reset. And I think Tom Homan's going to work hard to do that if Congress will support them and do the right thing and not play politics with it.
Quickly on to California, the wildfires there, devastating stuff. We've got some of our firefighters there on the front lines. Talk of relief money to those in California. The House Speaker is looking at attaching conditions. The Democratic caucus says that's a terrible idea. Where does Chip Roy stand on it?
Well, first of all, I agree with J.D. Vance and a lot of his messaging this weekend. We're praying for the folks out there. Like, we have our differences of opinion with Californians, but they're our fellow Americans, and these fires are devastating to a very beautiful and a part of the country that God gave us there. And I wish them well. And I'm not looking to dance on the, try to capitalize politically on the fact that we know that there are a lot of reasons why they're rather, leftist progressive policies have caused this, whether it was the, lack of responsible forest policies and clearing out the underbrush, having water available and all those things. But those things do matter. And if we're talking about writing a check, they should not get a blank check. Our FEMA exists to help people in need, and FEMA should be deployed right now to help the people in need. Let me just be very clear about that. But in terms of any kind of checks and rebuilding and money that's going directly to California, money that's being moved out of supporting North Carolina, money, we got to make sure North Carolina is taken care of. Any money goes to California. They need to change their crazy policies. Their crazy policies are hurting not just them, but our entire country. So enough. You shouldn't get a blank check without changing your policies.
And my last one for you, we just learned today a bill to punish the International Criminal Court over that warrant for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It's not going to get support from the top Democrat on the Foreign Relations Committee. Just passed the House. Now concerns about this moving forward in the Senate. What's your reaction to that?
Well, look, the legislative process, take the bill up and amend it. Let's see what the Democrats, they're going to put their money where their mouth is. Doesn't surprise me that there are a significant bloc there that want to oppose Israel and not stand up to sanction the International Criminal Court. But just to be very clear, this is about protecting American interests. The International Criminal Court has targeted our men and women in uniform, targeted our officials, and they have no jurisdiction over our people any more than they have jurisdiction over Prime Minister Netanyahu. For them to issue arrest warrants to the prime minister of a country defending his people and fighting against Hamas, and by the way, in the process, moving all sorts of humanitarian assistance in support of and opening up lanes for people in Gaza to get support. It's absurd that the ICC would be allowed to do that and we not sanction them. So if Democrats want to answer that question, how they're willing to have an international tribunal sanction not just Prime Minister Netanyahu, but go after Prime Minister Netanyahu, but also our own people, which they've done in the past. It's ridiculous. We should sanction them. If Democrats oppose it, it's just more politics as usual by them.
My last one for you, as this 119th Congress gets started, what about working with Democrats? What issues do you see yourself working with them on?
Well, funny enough, today I introduced legislation again with a Democrat colleague, this time Seth Magaziner, because my former colleague Abigail Spanberger left to go back to Virginia, I think, to run for governor. But Seth is a new friend, and we've been working together on a bill to ban stock trading among members of Congress. And that's it's the bill that I have with Abigail, but we introduced that today. I've got other bills. Henry Cuellar is a good friend, obviously represents San Antonio. We worked on things together, and I'm sure we will again in terms of border security and the issues that face the people that we represent in San Antonio and South Texas. And look, I look forward, by the way, then there was a very bipartisan effort to get the direct flight from San Antonio to D.C. I spent a lot of time on that last year, working with the entire delegation, and hopefully on February I'll be on that first flight, coming up from San Antonio to D.C. So, or I don't know if it's going the other way, whichever one's the first direction. I'll be happy to be on it if I can be. So we'll keep fighting for San Antonio and fighting for Texas on a bipartisan basis where we can. I'm not afraid to call out my colleagues on both sides of the aisle and find if they call me out. We just got to work together to get things done.
Yeah, you are certainly not averse to calling people out. We've seen it on the floor. Anything else you wanted to add, sir?
No, I'm good. Appreciate it.
All right, Representative, thank you.
Thanks, guys.